What's up? What's good, everybody? So right now we are comparing the iPhone 6s versus the Galaxy S7 Edge right now in 2018. Now what's interesting about both of these phones is that they actually came out a year away from each other, but not really. It was only like a couple months. The 6s came out in 2015 September, the S7 Edge February of 2016. Now between the two, they're actually selling at around the same prices, anywhere from $200. I would say the S7 Edge is just a little bit cheaper, but really it's negligible. You could probably get them around the same price. And now I'm going to go further and I'm going to talk about specs and everything, but I do want to say, in terms of the body, the S7 Edge definitely has the plus here, no pun intended, because the iPhone 6s is pretty much aluminum. It doesn't feel cheap at all, but the S7 Edge has a glass back, and from holding both, I still think the S7 Edge feels like an $800 or $1,000 device, with the iPhone 6s does kind of show its age a little bit. And in terms of the screen size, the iPhone 6s has a 4.7-inch screen IPS panel. The S7 Edge, though, has a Super AMOLED screen, which is 5.5 inches, and it's a little bit higher res at 1440p versus 750p on the iPhone 6s. And I would way rather have the S7 Edge's screen than the iPhone 6s's screen, if I'm being honest. One thing I do like about the 6s though is that I prefer Touch ID 2 over the Android fingerprint sensor on the S7 Edge. I don't know why. The S7 Edge's fingerprint sensor isn't horrible, but I do think Touch ID is a little bit better in terms of overall technology. Now going a little bit further, these phones actually are completely different in terms of operating systems. We have iOS on the iPhone and Android on the Samsung Galaxy. And so when I go further and I talk about these specs and everything, do note that on iOS, it doesn't really need to have the latest and greatest specs in order to be comparable to the Android counterparts. So 2 gigabytes of RAM on an iPhone could technically be just as good as 4 gigabytes of RAM on an Android, and vice versa, and specs go back and forth. So on the iPhone 6s is starting off getting iOS 9, and it's right now upgradable to iOS 11.4, and is going to get iOS 12 and probably iOS 13. But the S7 Edge, I'm pretty sure is going to stop getting updates right now. Started off getting Android 6.0, and now it's upgradable to Android 8.0, and I don't think it's going further than that, if I'm being honest. Samsung hasn't really said anything about it getting Android 9.0, so I'm not really too bitter about it stopping there, but again, Samsung has, and Android in general, manufacturers, they just have a stereotype of not updating their softwares at all on their phones, which really sucks. Because the S7 Edge does have a lot of potential, and I would love to see Android 9.0 on this thing, but as of now, there's been no sign of them supporting it. The 6s had the Apple A9 chip, a dual-core processor clocked at 1.84 GHz, and 2 GB of RAM, with the S7 Edge had a Qualcomm Snapdragon 820 processor, a quad-core processor clocked at 2.15 GHz, and some variants did have an octa-core processor. And this phone had 4 GB of RAM, and if I'm being completely 100% honest, these phones are pretty comparable when it comes down to overall performance and everything. Now I want to preface that by saying if Samsung did not put TouchWiz on the S7 Edge, I would think that the S7 Edge would probably be faster than the iPhone 6s. I just feel like TouchWiz really bogs down pure Android and what Android could possibly be on the S7 Edge, but I'm pretty sure there's a root and custom ROM out for it. So if you're into that, then that would definitely be something I would consider. But I just want to take these phones as face value. If you're not going to jailbreak or root it, custom ROM it, I do think the iPhone 6s might be a little bit faster in some cases, especially considering the fact that the 6s is still going to get software updates versus the S7 Edge. But on paper, you would probably expect the S7 Edge to be faster, and it's definitely not slow. But I do think the iPhone 6s is a little bit faster, which is really weird considering these specs. Because these specs are pretty much almost what the iPhone X has if you're looking at it just on paper, which is really weird, but it really is whatever. Now, in terms of cameras, we have a 12 megapixel camera on the 6s, a 12 megapixel camera on the S7 Edge as well. They both can shoot 4K videos, which is good. And I would say between the two, the S7 Edge probably does have the better camera here. They both do not have two cameras or anything like that. It's all single cameras on the back. The S7 Edge does have optical image stabilization, which is pretty interesting considering the S6s does not. The 6s Plus does, but that's not even in the equation right now. They both pretty much shoot the same type of video frame rates and everything. The 6s does shoot 1080p at 120 frames per second. So if you're into video shooting and shooting videos and all that stuff, filming on your phone, the 6s might be better in that case. But I would say in terms of pure photos and pure videos, the S7 Edge probably is a little bit better here. Now battery life is pretty interesting as well. I would say without a doubt the S7 Edge definitely does have a better battery life than the 6s. And the specs show it as well. 1715 mAh battery on the iPhone 6s and a 3600 mAh battery on the S7 Edge, which I mean, there's no comparison. The S7 Edge is better, even though it has a bigger screen, brighter screen, whatever, higher res screen, technically on paper better specs. It's still better than the iPhone 6s. And I would say the iPhone 6s, in terms of recent times, probably had the worst battery life out of all the current iPhones that are being supported by iOS 12. I would say that even the iPhone 6 had better battery life, if I'm being honest. Now, some other notable things to note: they both have headphone jacks. The Galaxy S7 Edge does have a microSD card slot, where the iPhone 6s does not, and that's kind of a huge thing. I mean, you can get this phone for the cheapest price, 32 gigabytes on the base model, and just upgrade the storage, where the iPhone 6s, you have to manually pick which phone you're getting and pay more of a price based on the onboard storage, which kind of sucks a little bit for a lot of people, but I mean, what are you going to do, you know? The iPhone 6s, like I said, I think does have a better fingerprint sensor than the S7 Edge. The iPhone 6s also has Force Touch, 3D Touch, whatever you want to call it, where the Galaxy S7 Edge does not, which is kind of weird. But the cool thing is that the S7 Edge has the curved screen, and I kind of waited until the end to say this because it's kind of a gimmick for a lot of people, but I do kind of like that curved screen. But sometimes if I'm holding the phone, it'll like register touches that I never meant to touch, so just keep that in your head. And it has always on display, which is pretty interesting. I really do like that, and I really hope Apple takes advantage of that with iOS 12 or iOS 13 for the iPhone 10 and then other phones that have OLED screens. And the S7 Edge has wireless charging, where the iPhone 6s does not. Now, between the two, which one should you get? I would say, if you're taking the bias of iOS out and all that stuff, the Galaxy S7 Edge does kind of seem like a better phone to me in 2018. Really, the only downside I can think of would probably be the lack of updates. It's not going to get any more updates or anything like that, so that's kind of a sad thing. But if I'm being honest, if I were to get this phone, I would definitely 100,000% root it and throw a custom ROM on it. It might take away some features or anything like that, but getting support, like, that's something I would rather do. But a lot of people aren't interested in it, so even if you're getting it stock and keeping it stock, I would kind of even recommend it that way too. The iPhone 6s is not a horrible phone either. If you kind of do have a bias towards Apple and you want to get a phone that's running iOS, the iPhone 6s is probably the best priced iPhone out there. Highly recommend that too. It's an amazing phone. So yeah, that's pretty much where I'm going to leave it at. I'll leave links in the description if you want to pick up a Galaxy S7 Edge or an iPhone 6s. I would totally recommend getting it from those links so you can support the channel and so I can make more videos like this and more comparisons. So definitely purchase things through that link. I would really appreciate it. If you guys have any questions or anything, leave it down in the comment section below. Hit that like button, that'll mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. We're still giving away an iPhone 6s and an iPhone SE on the channel, and in order to enter, all you have to do is subscribe to the channel and follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Both those links are down in the description, so it'll mean so much if you guys could hit that. Check out the other links down there too, my second channel, my SoundCloud, all that stuff is down there. I would really appreciate if you guys could check it out, but more importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys, and hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.